Malika, this franchise is moving away from Nico Harrison's 3 to 4 year championship window and toward trying to find sustained success and sustained growth around Cooper Flagg and youth. And to that end, sources have told ESPN that the Mavericks will be listening to trade calls for Anthony Davis and seeing and exploring his value. And for that, health will be the biggest key because not only for the Mavericks to evaluate Anthony Davis over a lengthy period of time, an extended period of time on the court, but for other teams that could have interest in him to see what he looks like when he's back, what this team looks like when he's back, a lot of evaluation to come around Anthony Davis the next couple of months.
Anthony Davis is once again at the center of NBA trade conversations, and this time it isn't about whether he's good enough. It's about whether the league still knows how to value a player like him in a future that prioritizes flexibility, durability, and financial control over pure star power. Right now, front offices aren't asking if Anthony Davis can dominate a playoff series. They're asking what his contract, his health profile, and his age curve mean for the next 2 to 4 seasons. Because in today's NBA, future value is weighted more heavily than past production, and every major decision is framed through risk-adjusted return rather than nostalgia. If you want NBA conversations that break down what could happen next, hit the like button, subscribe for more NBA business and finance breakdowns, and let's get straight into why Anthony Davis may define the next major shift in how franchises evaluate star investments. The reason these trade discussions feel persistent rather than reactionary is because Anthony Davis represents one of the clearest stress tests for modern roster construction. Teams are operating under a salary cap projected to grow at roughly 6 to 8% annually, while luxury tax penalties, especially second apron restrictions, have become exponentially more punitive. A single max contract no longer just costs money, it costs flexibility, exceptions, and future optionality. Looking forward, Dallas is positioned at a crossroads where every possible outcome carries both upside and exposure. Holding Anthony Davis commits the franchise to a high-ceiling, high-volatility path where championship contention is directly tied to health outcomes. Davis is owed over $54 million this season, with that number rising toward the $60 million range over the next 2 years, which means roughly 35 to 40% of the team's total cap space is concentrated in one player. From a business perspective, that concentration amplifies variance. When Davis is available, Dallas performs like a top-tier defensive unit. When he's unavailable, the team effectively operates with a sunk cost, occupying cap space that cannot be reallocated mid-season. Financially, that's the equivalent of investing a third of your portfolio into a volatile asset with limited liquidity. Trading him, however, reshapes the franchise's financial structure. Moving that contract could open access to multiple mid-tier contracts, future draft capital, or younger players still on cost-controlled deals. Even 2 rotation-level players earning $15 to $20 million each can provide more aggregate availability and lineup stability than a single high-risk star. And front offices increasingly quantify this trade-off using expected games played rather than peak performance. This is no longer about whether the original trade made sense. It's about whether the current version of the NBA rewards concentrated star investment or diversified roster value. And Anthony Davis sits at the center of that philosophical divide. From a future-facing basketball standpoint, Davis still projects as a playoff difference maker. His defensive metrics remain elite when healthy, ranking near the top of the league in rim deterrence and defensive field goal percentage at the basket. In postseason simulations, a healthy Anthony Davis can swing win probabilities by 10 to 15% in a single series. But front offices don't plan around ceilings anymore. They plan around distributions. When teams model future seasons, they don't ask how good Davis can be, they ask how often they can reasonably expect peak output. If a front office projects a 70% availability rate over an 82-game season, that means planning for 20 to 25 games without their most expensive asset. Over multiple seasons, that risk compounds. Financially, this uncertainty forces conservative decision-making elsewhere. You can't afford multiple high-risk contracts on the same roster, which means Davis's presence limits the types of players Dallas can pursue next. Every additional contract must skew towards reliability, even if that caps upside.
Anthony Davis' value may not be as high as you think it is, because when you talk to people around the league, they say, hey, he's going to turn 33 later this year. He's due a contract extension potentially next summer. That might scare some teams away. And the fact that it's just harder for teams to trade. But the reason that could be interesting is that might bring the contenders into this. Teams that may not have been able to trade for Anthony Davis a year ago may be able to trade for him this year. And that could change the balance of power, Coach, in the Eastern Conference.
Anthony Davis's contract doesn't just exist on the payroll, it actively shapes future decision trees. As his salary escalates, it compresses flexibility, raises the cost of mistakes, and magnifies the impact of underperformance. Under the new CBA, teams above the second apron lose access to key roster-building tools, including sign-in trades and certain exceptions, which turns a single contract into a systemic constraint. For Dallas, this means every potential future trade involving Davis must balance competitive relevance with financial sustainability. A deal that returns draft picks and expiring contracts could reset flexibility within 12 to 18 months. A deal that swaps Davis for another max player merely shifts risk sideways without improving long-term outlook. That's why realistic Anthony Davis trade scenarios lean towards multi-team structures. These allow salary to be distributed across multiple balance sheets, reduce individual team exposure, and align incentives between rebuilding teams seeking assets and contenders seeking impact.
The Dallas Mavericks are a joke. They're a joke. They are, the most embarrassing organization in sports. They are, right now. They're the most embarrassing organization in sports. Dysfunctional at its finest. When you look at what's going on in that organization. This used to be an organization that people used to want to run to. Now this has become an organization where people is running away from. And when you think about trading your international superstar, Rob Pelinka, trading away, a used Volvo to get back a Rolls Royce, and then all of a sudden you fire Nico Harrison, right? And then you come down and you look at this situation where they're talking about, possibly going away from Anthony Davis. What is really going on in Dallas? It's called lack of leadership. It's called embarrassment. It's called dysfunctional. And it's a damn shame, because this organization has been one of the best organizations in the league in my eyes when it was ran under the proper ownership and ran by the proper front office.
From the league's perspective, Davis's market also reveals how teams currently price aging stars under max contracts. Younger teams with cores under 25 view him as timeline incompatible. Rebuilding teams demand draft compensation to absorb his deal. Contenders evaluate him as a finishing piece but hesitate at committing $60 million annually to a player past 30. That narrows the market significantly, and scarcity changes leverage. If Dallas trades him, they won't be operating in a seller's market driven by hype. They'll be operating in a buyer's market driven by spreadsheets, medical reports, and long-term cap modeling. That reality doesn't diminish Davis's talent, but it reframes his value through financial efficiency rather than star prestige.
Because now that we know this, Shams, what does AD's future look like with this team?
Malika, for all intents and purposes, meaningful basketball in Dallas for Davis this season is essentially over because of the time he's going to miss with the injury, and also because this is a Mavericks team that's going to be jockeying for lottery positioning in the second half of the season. They're 12th in the Western Conference right now. This is the last year they controlled their first-round pick until 2031. So jockeying will be the big word for the Mavericks second half of the season. But for the business of basketball, let's flip there. I'm told the Mavericks are having renewed trade talks around Davis with multiple interested teams. Two of the foremost teams there, Atlanta and Toronto. But one thing that has been made clear in the last few days from people that I talked to is the cost is most certainly going to be lower for the Mavericks than it was even a month ago when the Mavericks were hedging that Davis would rack up games, would improve his value, and it could go up and up in terms of what they could get But what has happened now is the groin injury in late December,
Right.
and then now this much more serious hand injury. And so the Mavericks have to make a decision. Are we content with potentially expiring contracts, essentially cleaning out our salary books, getting rid of Anthony Davis's contract, maybe getting a draft pick, and then fully rebuilding around Cooper Flagg with clean salary books? Or do you hedge again that Anthony Davis's value could be at a good level in the summer? And if not, bring back AD with Kyrie Irving, Cooper Flagg, and potentially a high draft pick. These are all conversations the Mavericks are having right now.
Zooming out further, Anthony Davis's situation highlights a broader shift in NBA economics. Teams are increasingly prioritizing stars who scale easily within systems, who preserve flexibility, and who maintain availability deep into their contracts. The NBA is slowly transitioning away from single-point failure models towards resilient roster ecosystems. This doesn't mean players like Davis are obsolete, but it does mean their role is changing. Instead of being foundational pillars for a decade, they're becoming accelerants, players who raise championship odds sharply for a defined window, after which risk outweighs reward. For Dallas, the future hinges on whether their competitive timeline aligns with that window. As upcoming trade deadlines and off-seasons approach, Anthony Davis's name will continue to circulate, not because of drama, but because of math. Cap projections, tax penalties, aging curves, and probability modeling will ultimately determine his future more than narratives ever will. Holding him signals a commitment to maximizing present value at the expense of flexibility. Trading him signals a pivot towards controlled risk and extended sustainability. Both choices reshape the franchise's financial trajectory, and neither decision exists in isolation. And that's what makes this situation so important. Anthony Davis is no longer just a superstar. He's a living case study in how the NBA's business model is evolving in real time. So when you hear trade rumors surrounding him, understand this: they aren't about doubt, they're about direction. He is still elite, he is still impactful. But in today's NBA, value is forward-looking, contextual, and unforgiving. And Dallas is navigating one of the most complex strategic decisions in the league. Drop a comment with what you think the Mavericks should do next. Subscribe if you want more NBA business and finance breakdowns like this, and I'll see you next time.
As of right now, Cooper Flagg is untouchable. Kyrie Irving is untouchable. PJ Washington also untouchable. He's not trade eligible.
Okay.
Aside from that, the Mavericks are fully open for business.